And so, my dear ones, welcome into the sanctuary on this wonderful day as we move ahead deeper into this experience called Advent. And its sense of open receptivity, its sense of wanting more of an awareness of belonging, and as nature itself moves more deeply in the Western Hemisphere into the darker and the darker and the darker days of the winter solstice. And so today we are embracing the theme of wholeness for this month under the banner today of darkness and light and how that all fits together. And so we look to this thing called winter solstice that we're moving into, and we realize that indeed it has been something that has been celebrated for thousands and thousands and thousands of years when people gathered at that time of year to be appreciative of the light. And way back when, the great god Mitra was the one that was celebrated on the 22nd of December. And he is reputed to have been born on the 22nd of December. So in the midst of the deepest darkness, up comes this god of light, its mother being Earth itself. So we are told that he appeared on that day in that darkness with a stone-hewed weapon in his hand out of the earth. And that was the God that was worshipped for so many thousands of years. And indeed was the great competitor to Christianity for the first 3 centuries of Christianity. And eventually the established church cottoned on to the fact that they were not going to be able to pull the people back from this particular celebration at that time of year because it's deep in the human psyche. So they just Christianized it and they called it Christmas, and they just moved it a little bit to the 25th. And then people got to celebrate, you see, this thing called light. So in the ancient mythology, you had the mother, you had the sun, and you had the light. In the new Christian era, you had the mother, you had the sun, and you had the light, all celebrating the same thing in different ways and with a different understanding. And so it brings us back into that deep reach within the humanness of ourselves that understands the power of darkness and the necessity of darkness in a way, and the understanding and acceptance of darkness as part of the human experience and part of nature's experience. And also how in darkness, eventually when light comes, we can value the light much more deeply and fully, having experienced the darker times, the darker experiences that we're having. And the cave has always been an analogy and this symbology for moving out of the darkness into the light. And caves have been places of initiation for, again, thousands of years, still are. In fact, all those little boys with their football teacher who went into that cave and got stranded in all of that water and so on, they were there for an initiation. When they reached a certain age, it was a big manly thing to do, go into the darkness of the cave and so on. So you see, it's still happening. It's still happening. It's something primordial within us. And thank God there was a good outcome there. And boy, did they appreciate the light when they got out. And so what is it for you and for me in this time in the Western world called Advent? And indeed, going back even in pagan times in the Western world, we used to call these days Yuletime days. It was the Yuletide, and the Norse people called it Yule or Jule, J-U-L. It's spelled Jule. I'm quite sure how they pronounce it. But there was always that sense and sensibility that we can't be inactive in our darkness. We mustn't remain inactive in our darkness. It doesn't mean we bury ourselves and wait till the light comes. No, they got very, very busy, and what they did was they built on all of the hilltops big pyres, big fire opportunities to celebrate the coming of the light. And so they were very, very, very busy in the deep winter, collecting all the wood to create these huge bonfires all over the place, and getting themselves, in other words, prepared. And so when the light came, they could even more appreciate it because they had participated in, affecting the whole ceremony of this. And so with the Christian Western tradition too, there is that old pagan understanding running throughout all of what we do, that it's necessary for us to prepare in the darkness to receive the light, or for the return of the light. And for us in metaphysics, it's not so much to prepare for the return of the light, but to prepare ourselves to reveal more fully the light that's always present with us, and that we forget about too often and are not identifying with sufficiently, which causes us to think the light has left us and we're stuck in the dark. Now, you hear people talk all of the time, oh, they left me in the dark about that one. I don't know anything about that. I was left in the dark about that one. And then you hear them say, oh, it dawned on me. It dawned on me. It dawned on me. You see, so all of that sense and sensibility is still with us as human beings. So we're more pagan than we might imagine, actually, in our rituals and so on, because the godliness of us needs no ritual, needs no symbology. It just is what it is, what it is. And yet, as a human being on a three-dimensional plane, wearing a human body, we are caught up in all of our history, so to speak, and in all of that amazing imprinting throughout time. Because as you know, the power of consciousness is such that every single memory is contained within you and within me with regard to human history. It's all, we're big computers, really. We can just go, pull that up, whatever. And so we're so fascinating, it's unbelievable. We're amazing, incredibly, awesomely, wondrously amazing. And we've no idea of ourselves at all. No idea. We just think we're these little human beings, and here I am, and I'm so inadequate, and I haven't got, and I haven't done, and I haven't achieved, and I haven't accomplished, and look at them over there, and him over there, and her up there, and here I am, still plodding, still efforting, still struggling, still trying. What? You see? And so thankfully we come to places like this to remind ourselves that we're so much more than that. We are so much more than that. But the beauty and grace of this time, getting back to darkness and light, is that it's for you and for me to embrace. We're supposed to embrace the darkness, not be afraid to go into the cave, because when we go into the cave, we know we're going into this amazing opportunity for growth and expansion and rebirthing of the consciousness that already was, is, and will be within us forever and for always. And so it's for you and for me to say, I'm in the dark right now. Isn't that interesting? So what do we do with the darkness? We get quiet in it. We get still in it. We get listening in it. We listen, we're quiet, we're still, and we're incubating, so to speak. We're pregnated with this something about to happen, something that's going to be given birth to, and it's good, and it's very good. Just taking the analogy of a baby grows in the darkness, so to speak, on the inside in the darkness, so to speak. And there's where it is in its cave, and it's safe, and it's secure under regular, ordinary, normal circumstances. And all of its needs is being taken care of. And unbeknownst to it, as well as known to it, wonderful things are happening. And the initiation is occurring. And the readiness and the preparation is being made for it to emerge out of the darkness into the light. This is your process and my process all of the time, and it's not confined to any one season. We, as human, spiritual beings, can go through winter, summer, spring, or fall like that, at any time, in any place, regardless. And some of us now are in summer, some of us here are in spring, some of us here are in autumn, and some of us here are in winter, psychologically speaking. So but the thing is, you're in charge of your own weather. You can change that. You can change that. And that's the message always. The light is always available to us, and in it and through it and by means of it and as it, we can bring about all kinds of change for the better. Amazing, isn't it? It's like we've never heard this before, and yet we've always known it. Even before speech, even before anything, we've always known this. Why? Because we are it. That's what we are. We're pure, undiluted energy, pure energy, which is light energy, which is infinitely intelligent and all-powerful, all-knowing, and everywhere present. You can't deny omnipresence. Well, you could, but it'd be silly to do that, because omnipresence means everywhere. Yes, even in the best of us, and even in the worst of us, and even in the in-betweeners. It's there, present, available to you and to me at any given time. So if you and I choose to stay in the darkness forever, not good, not so good. We're not experiencing in that cave what the opportunity is to experience. We've forgotten why we're in the cave. Oh, we're in the dark. That's all we know. It's scary in the dark. I can't see a thing in the dark. What's that sound I hear in the dark? I can't recognize that noise. What is it? And so on. So you and I are always in a state of pregnancy. Did you know that? Spiritual pregnancy. We're always giving birth to something or another, or have the ability to give birth to something or another. But mark my words, you and I are giving birth all the time to something good, bad, or indifferent. But birth we will, because that's who and what we are. It's ours to create something new all the time, something new all the time, bring in something new all the time, bring in something new all the time. The question is, where are you in this sojourn right here and right now? Well, Advent, which is a word for come, awakening, come, awakening. Come awakening. And Ernest Holmes talks about this. Oh, there's a beautiful description of light on page 607 in the 1938 edition. Much more goodies in the 1938 edition than you get in the present one, really. But he talks about darkness, he talks about light, he talks about in the beginning the light, and so on and so forth. And he also says, you know, this is the moment now when we must make choices. This is the moment now when we must make a big decision to leave fear for faith, so that we can be open enough, in the light enough, to understand and know and receive that there is a power for good that we get to use and that uses us. And the question is, are we ready? Are we willing? And are we able, he says, to embrace this? To embrace this. This would be the time. This would be a wonderful time. And so at the end of a year, usually, we're always trying to scratch together the semblance of what's left over to be done and get it done and get it out of the way, and I haven't accomplished all my goals, and maybe I will. No, you won't. Not at this stage at the end of the year. It's not going to happen. Let them go. Let them go. Let them go. The rain never bothered me anyway. The fear never bothered me anyway. Let it go. Be done with it. Don't drag anything from this year into the next old year. You have every opportunity to create whatever good you want to create today, this moment, now, next year, or whenever. But it's yours. The power is yours now, regardless of how you came in through those doors today, whether you had to drag yourself in here, whether you came in here inside moaning, groaning, and feeling the weight of it all, or whether you came in here hopping for joy and all the stages in between, whether or not you cried yourself to sleep last night, or you couldn't wait to get up in the morning to get into the day and have another great good day. Yes, and especially for those of us who are feeling fragmented, feeling disjointed, feeling out of it, estranged from it all, especially for those of us who are in those states, the good news is, snap out of it. You can. Now, I don't say that facetiously, and I don't say that lightly. I'm endeavoring to appeal to your power, the power in you to be able to accomplish whatever good it is that you desire, if you put your shoulder to it, if you put your back to it, if you do what it takes for that to happen. They didn't sit around waiting for the light to come on its own. They got up off their dairy airs. They went out into the cold, the dark, and the dangers. They collected the wood. They dragged it up the hills. They put it all together. And regardless of whether it was raining or whatever it was, they watched that. They guarded that. And then when the moment came, they ignited that. And with their igniting of that wood, something in them ignited too. Something happened. Do you want something to happen this season, this winter solstice, this celebration of the light, be it a pagan one, a Christian one, a whatever one? It doesn't matter. There's something in us. The deep in us calls upon the deep in us. The darkness serves us bursting into the light. It really does. So I'm saying, at this precious time, when the world of spirituality and those committed and dedicated to spiritual lives withdraw, they take themselves out of the swing of the sea, so to speak. They go into silence more. They go into contemplation more. They go into being with the darkness more so that they can prepare themselves to be empty vessels to be filled up by the light. As I was sharing this morning, have you ever, it's a Zen practice, ponder, look at carefully empty things, the empty jugs, the empty jars, the empty cups, the empty vases. Look at them carefully. Enjoy the emptiness of them, for guess what? It is the emptiness in the vessel that gives it its importance. It's the emptiness in the vessel that gives it its importance and its ability to serve in a way it couldn't serve just being empty. And then you and I get to fill those things up with whatever. You and I can be empty vessels if we wouldn't clog ourselves up with so much gunk. Because clogged up with gunk, there's no space for anything to come in. So let's become those empty vessels for the remainder of the days of this year and see what great things we can pour into those empty vessels, and the good that we can experience as a consequence of that. Might be the gift of health, it might be the gift of abundance, it might be the gift of joy, it might be the gift of relationship or friendship or whatever. You get to choose. What do you want to fill your vessel up with? Because you're the one that chooses what it's going to be filled with. Well, I say the light, I say the light, I say the light. But remember, if you don't create the space within the vessel, it cannot be filled. It's already full, it's taken. So it's up to you and it's up to me. And that's why the wonderful people in monasteries and convents and temples and all the rest of it, places of such, withdraw at this time of year. And they have as little contact with the outside world as possible. No mail touched until after the 25th. No gifts opened until the 25th. No extra encounters that are unnecessary with outer world or people or even with themselves. It's a very quiet and it's a very contemplative time of being. Now, in most spiritual organizations throughout all cultures, there's the calling to wake up in prayerfulness throughout the day, at least 7 times, and more in some. 7 times a day to pause, stop, remember, and on Wednesday mornings we get time to remind ourselves of that. I always recommend that when you've finished a task, stop. Tune in, see how you are, where your mind is, where your emotion is, and does it need a little adjustment, a little recalibrating or some such. And pause and we remember, I'm in the presence of God and God's presence is in me. I'm in the presence of God and God's presence. What does that mean to me? It ought to be a boost, a shot of light coming through us to remember this. And as we go about crazily trying to get the right thing for the right person at the right cost and so on and so forth, trying to figure out what gifts are the best gifts we could possibly give the people that we love, bear in mind that all the time we're racing around trying to do this, we've no time for them because we're busy racing around trying to find out to get them a gift that they may or may not like. Odds are that it mightn't be to their liking because everybody's very personal in what they like and so on. And so I would recommend, as I did this morning, to say, for goodness sake, make it your business to give the best of all gifts you could ever give anybody, and it's you, your time, your presence, your focus, your attention, and your awe and your wonder. If you could give anything from 5 minutes maybe to 10 minutes, if you can, 15 minutes if you're really feeling generous, to a child, to a grandchild, to a neighbor's child, to a son, to a daughter, to a family member, to a neighbor, to somebody you meet for the first time, if you could just be there in awe and wonder in front of them as the presence, recognizing the presence and just listening and responding accordingly, but being totally focused on that person, it's the best of all gifts. And I can tell you, you will feel the light as you do that, and they will feel the light as they receive that. And you and that person will be more light-filled and lighter of being as a result of that gift. The question is, are you black belter enough in this teaching to be able to give gifts like that? That's the question. It's rhetorical. It's up to you and it's up to me to be able to work that into our more than busy schedules at this time. But it is the most challenging and the best of all gifts for us to give, because we feel we have to do something or give something or spend something in order for it to be the ideal gift. We've been habituated by commercialism, etc., to think that. And we're gullible. I mean, we're like lemons. We just follow the trends and whatever else is. And the thing is, you got to go inside to get the real deal. You got to go inside to get the real scoop. You got to go inside to get the right answers. There's no other way. The question is, where are we in the process? And is what anything we're hearing now making that connection within us to cause us to change up just a little bit? Remember, change every day for the better is a wonderful thing. And you and I have been preparing all this time. We've been trying to keep our mouths shut as often as possible, not missing an opportunity to keep our mouths shut. We've been endeavoring not to get offended, not to stop getting offended, which is a very good thing too, and we've been endeavoring to make that little change every day that will make our lives better. And what makes life better for me makes life better for everybody else too. In the darkness, let there be light. So take your darkness, collect your darkness to you, embrace your darkness, thank your darkness. It's there with a message to convey and a gift to bring. And go with the flow of it and be not afraid. And as Ernest says, are we ready to exchange our fear for faith? Are we ready to move out of the anxiety of it all and trust the creative process of all of life? There's no need for you to be worried about a darn thing outside of your own life. And it's yours to take care of your own concerns and your own anxieties. And when we do that, we're helping all of life. We're easing up the tension in all of life when we just take care of this little corner, in our own little corner, our own little chair, in our own little room. So, my dear ones, you're full of the light. You're full of it. You're just never going to be any more lightful than you are now. It's not going to happen. There's nothing more for you to do in order to get better. You'll never be better than you are now. I don't know whether this is a comfort or not, but that's the truth. All we have to do is to wake up and remember, in the darkness there is always the possibility of the light. It's just waiting for your recognition. That is all. That is all. Those who walk in darkness, walk, not crawl, not lament, not cry, but those who walk in darkness have seen a great light, we are told. And if your eye be single, then your whole body will be filled with light. If your inner vision, inner clarity is really buzzing with that sense and sensibility of light, then the vessel is filled with light too, and everything else is as well. We're here just to remind each other, that's all. I have nothing to teach anybody, and no one can teach me anything. It's all within ourselves. But we are here to remind each other of what we already know. So let us, in this time of year especially, take some of that light from within ourselves and spread it into whatever darkness we may encounter within ourselves or around ourselves, and be the difference we're here to be. Put on the table what we're here to put on the table. Make the contribution we're here to make. And just by being ourselves, with a little bit more wisdom and grace and understanding and open receptivity to creating a space for it all to flow through as it is meant to be and can. So you are the point of power through which the infinite in all of its radiant light and magnificence pours itself forth. If you open the sluice gate and let it happen, and so it is.